When's the last time you thought about your website backup strategy? In this video, I want to talk to you about exactly that. I want to revisit your backup strategy, make sure you are following some basic best practices, and then I'm going to go behind the scenes and show you exactly how I manage my website backups, not only for my own sites, but for all the sites that I manage as part of the concierge program. Too often, I find people with websites that don't even think about the backups of that website. If they even think about it at all, they're pretty much assuming that the web host just sort of takes care of it, which in most cases actually is true. Most web hosts do daily website backups automatically, and you don't have to really think about that portion of it all that much. However, it's not a complete and total backup strategy because it makes you completely reliant upon your web host, okay? And here's the thing. There have been horror stories out there of web hosts getting hacked or getting held hostage by ransomware and stuff like that, and they've literally lost their backups. They've lost all the websites. It isn't very frequent, but it has happened. And so that's just an extreme case of why you never want to have 100% reliance on your web host for backups and blind trust in what they're doing to maintain a good backup strategy. You need to take some responsibility for it on your own. It's also important to note that this is especially true if you are using virtual private servers or something like that, because what happens is a lot of times any backups that are happening are literally being put on the exact same server as your actual website, which completely defeats the point at that point. Because if something happens to the server, you lost just not only your website, but all the backups as well. And so when you're on a virtual private server, you need to take special care about how that site is backed up and make sure that it's going someplace else. So in this world of backups, there's something called the 3-2-1 strategy. It's been around forever. It's very, very well known, but it basically means this. You have 3 copies of your data, okay, at least in 2 different locations, and at least one of them needs to be off-site in someplace else. That's the 3-2-1 strategy. And if you're just blindly trusting your web host to do it, there's a really good chance you do not have a 3-2-1 strategy in place. They might have a 3-2-1 strategy in place. They're probably not going to talk about that on your website. You'd have to directly ask them. But frankly, even if they do, take some responsibility on your own and implement the 3-2-1 strategy. In addition to the 3-2-1 strategy, we also want to talk about backup frequency because some sites require different frequencies. The most typical is daily, and that's what I do on almost everybody. It's a daily backup, okay? But I will say some sites that are just brochure style sites, they really don't need backups all that frequently. You could probably just do weekly, okay? Sites that have a lot of activity, let's say you have Fluent CRM in there and you got all kinds of people coming onto your email list or you're running orders through WooCommerce, you probably want more frequent updates. You might, okay? In most cases, I find daily is perfectly fine, but in some cases, you might want to run every 12 hours. In some cases, you might want to run hourly. That starts to get a little extreme. And then in some really fringe cases, there might even be the idea of what's called real-time updates, where you're basically everything is just backed up in real time. Now, for something like that, I wouldn't even try to do it on your own. I would just use a remote service of some kind to take care of that for you, because otherwise, it's going to be too much headache. Almost everybody does not need that, okay? But what I would say is that daily updates are probably the most frequent, most common, most necessary. They work fine. And in some cases, maybe every 12 hours. There's also the full backups versus incremental backups. Now, full backup is literally going to be a full backup of your site, meaning you could take that backup, put it anywhere that you need to, and do a full site restore, and there it is. An incremental backup is a little bit different because the backup itself is actually smaller. So what happens is that on some schedule, maybe every week, you will have a full site backup, but then on the other 6 days of the week, it does a smaller incremental backup of just the things that have changed since the last backup. And incremental backups are great because they're not as much work for the server, they don't take as much storage space, stuff like that. That being said, you're also a little bit stuck with your backup solution because you're going to need that exact same solution in order to do a proper restore so it knows the differences and can interpret them and that type of stuff. Typically, the full backup is going to be your most flexible type of backup because you could literally take it anywhere and find a way to restore it if you had to. Now, should you use a remote service to do this, or should you use a plugin? Okay, because you've got services like Blog Vault and WordPress and stuff like this, and then you've got plugins like Updraft Plus and WP Vivid and those types of things. I've used both. In fact, I use both. Well, I don't use Updraft now. I use Blog Vault. Okay, now I'm a big fan of remote services, and they have some advantages over the self-hosted plugins because they take care of it all, okay? And it's also not dependent upon WordPress. That's one of the problems with something like Updraft Plus is that you are literally, that backup plugin is subject to the same environment and the same noise as other WordPress plugins, which means it can be subject to anything going wrong with your WordPress install. It can be subject to plugin conflicts and stuff like that. So generally speaking, it is better to have a remote storage solution because it's completely independent of WordPress. WordPress could be completely and totally broken, inaccessible, you can't log in, it literally doesn't matter. You could still restore that website using something like Blog Vault. On the other hand, solutions like Updraft Plus, it's plugin based, which means it's cheaper. You have generally more control over the timing and everything, the flexibility of deciding whether you want to put it onto Dropbox or Google Drive or Amazon S3 or something like that. You do have more control. And so you might wonder, okay, which one's better? Well, the truth is each one has advantages, okay? So if you really want to like cover all of your bases, you probably would do both, do a hybrid strategy. And with that, let me just talk about how I personally do it. Now, I'm in a position where I manage a lot of other people's websites besides just myself. Through the concierge program, I have about 100 sites under management as of this video, and then I've got my own stuff as well. And it's obviously I'm in a point of responsibility, and so I go actually way beyond the typical 3-2-1 strategy, and I do use the hybrid approach that I just mentioned. And so, first and foremost, I do use Blog Vault. Blog Vault is typically a $99 a year service for an individual site owner, but I think it's more than worth it actually. But I, through economies of scale, of course, I'm able to offer Blog Vault services for all of my concierge clients. So every client that I have is backed up every single day by Blog Vault, and that gives us a lot of flexibility, to use everything that Blog Vault offers to provide that security to your site. But of course, I don't even depend on just Blog Vault. I also do my own set of backups. Now, I have sites currently on rocket.net, which they have their own backup, so that's one point. And then I also have a bunch of sites over on a series of virtual private servers that I manage through the xCloud hosting panel, okay? Now, when you're using a virtual private server, you need to set up your own backups. Now, and I manage them through xCloud. If you were using them through some other VPS panel, you would set up your backups through that. But it's important that you set up those daily backups, at least daily backups of the websites, so that it's backed up to remote storage. You do not want to back it up to the VPS server because that completely defeats the point. So in my case, what I do is I back up to Cloudflare R2. Okay, it's basically an Amazon S3 equivalent. It's just that I don't care to use Amazon if I can help it. I use Cloudflare R2. One thing also from a perspective of myself, and I'll get to it in just a second, is that what's called egress, which is basically moving the downloads out of there, okay? They don't charge you for it. Hopefully they don't change that. Whereas Amazon S3 would. They like that download process out of Amazon S3 would cost some money as well. With Cloudflare R2, the prices are pretty cheap there. It's obviously got the full benefits of the Cloudflare network, and they don't charge for egress, which means that they can be downloaded from there as well as the uploads. They don't charge for that movement. Okay, so that's Cloudflare R2. That's one other point of storage, and then I take it an extra step further, and for that, let me pull out my phone and I'll show you. All right, the other one you can sometimes see in the background of my videos, but this is a network attached storage called a NAS from a company called Synology, okay? And there's 2 hard drives in there, really old big one. Basically, this is like having my own private cloud in the office. This, of course, is a UPS backup power supply that's attached to that. And so one of the other things that I do is that this Synology NAS is designed to go up to Cloudflare R2 and basically mirror it. Now, of course, I have other stuff on there as well, but basically everything, all the client site backups and my own site backups are all backed up on that. There's 2 hard drives in there in a RAID array, so they're basically backed up to each other automatically. And then there's also, and I don't know where the heck it is, right here, a USB backup. So this is going to the USB backup, and then this, because it's made by Synology, I've got it tapped into their cloud service, and it's with an encrypted backups called Synology C2. So this thing is going up and being backed up to the cloud as well. So how many backups we got there? Well, we sort of got two of them here because these two hard drives are mirrors of each other. We've got the external backup down there in case anything happened to that. And then I've also got an additional cloud backup up there at Synology C2 in case this thing just fried one day. And we're back at the desk, but that's a Synology over there in the corner. And that's basically my backup strategy in a nutshell. Now, I've gone obviously way past the 3-2-1. I use Blog Vault as my primary backup and restore point. All roads typically lead to Blog Vault because that's the easiest way to go. But of course, I've got the servers that are going up to Cloudflare R2 as a cloud backup, and then the cloud using what's called the Cloud Sync software on that Synology back there. It all gets mirrored right here. So I've got it here in the office as well, which means I can touch it. Like, there it is, okay? And so that is the full backup strategy. And of course, I also showed you how that thing is also backed up itself. So if that piece of hardware failed or fried in a Florida thunderstorm, I've got it all backed up anyway, okay? And so that's how I do it. And I find it to be pretty important. I'm also the digital sovereignty guy. So I like to be able to touch my backups, okay? So at the end of the day, I love all these cloud services, but sometimes it's just nice to have a backup that I can see right there on my own hard drive. All right, so at this point, it just comes down to taking action. Now, if you've already thought through your website backup strategy, you might not have anything to do. But if this video is basically reminding you that you should have one, now's the time to just pay a little bit of attention. The good thing is, it's one of those types of things that once you've done the work to set it up, which is usually fairly easy, it's sort of set it and forget it. You really don't need to think about it anymore unless something radical changes for you, okay? The other thing I want to make a point of is that you don't need to necessarily go through the extent that I did having a network attached storage device in your house or office. I just decided to do that because I'm a bit of a nerd. But I will say it is nice because that thing is basically a server sitting there doing work, and it automates the entire thing. I don't have to do anything to back up my cloud account to that. It just happened. Now, if you don't have that type of setup, maybe you can get some kind of a utility on your computer that will go up there and get it, on automatic and let it run overnight. Worst case scenario, just set up maybe perhaps a monthly recurring reminder in your to-do list software to just remind you to just log in and download a local backup. Just as long as you have some type of a local backup on your hard drive, on your computer, then that's an additional point in your 3-2-1 strategy. But I do recommend, besides that, you ensure that your web host is doing backups, okay? And then secondly, I think you should have at least one backup of your own on another cloud type service, whether that is through something like Blog Vault or through a plugin that you have it being backed up to Dropbox or Google Drive or something like that. You want to have something like that. And then periodically just go and manually download one of those things to your computer. I think that would be a pretty good idea. A lot of these cloud services, by the way, like Dropbox and Google and all that, you can set them up to automatically, like everything on those clouds is also on your hard drive, and that takes care of it for you. You're done at that point, okay? So that's what I recommend you do. Take a little time, make sure you got a cohesive backup strategy in place. If you have any questions for me that I can maybe help you through any little kinks or questions, just reach out. I'll be happy to answer you. But again, once you've done it, you know you're good to go. You don't really have to think about it again. And that's kind of the idea, because we all got better things to do to sit around and think about our backups all the time.